So the question is on our methodology.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of key concepts do you practice when you're doing this 20-minute workout?
It's really based on time under tension. So all our stuff is time under tension with no rests. So a lot of people, I think, are familiar with super slow. That's kind of the same thing, time under tension. So they don't let you take breaks between the reps like with traditional training. And if you think about a traditional rep, you're going to, do these fast ballistic motions. And if you go full extension like a lot of them do, you get a rest. And all the muscle cell needs is a quarter second to refuel. And so if you stop anywhere in the range without load on the muscle, without the muscle contracting, it's refueling. Well, with my methodology, it's time under tension. The muscle never gets a chance to refuel. It's always burning fuel. And we keep that time under tension going until complete muscle failure. And so the muscle cell has run out of fuel. It's emptied out. And it's really only then that the true magic happens. That's like the unicorn zone, where the muscle is empty. The gas tank is gone. All the fuel's gone, and you burn off the fumes. Only then does it see a need to change. It'll adapt with other resistance, even if it's intense, but only when it fails does it really see a convincing need to change. Because if you leave some fuel in the tank of that muscle cell at the end, it says, I could do that. I was fine. Why change? But if you empty it out and you make it fail, it says, wow, okay. So and so it assumes that you just moved to a place that is full of tigers and lions, and now it has to adapt and change to protect you because something urgent really just happened. So that's what our base is with the time under tension. That's the means to get to the end of complete muscle fatigue, but it's also beneficial in itself as time under tension because that gives you endurance. So you're building endurance results with the time under tension until you get to failure, and then you're strength training, and then you get the strength results. Now, when a muscle cell is trained exclusively with endurance, it wants to get smaller for efficiency, bring the capillaries closer to the nucleus. When the muscle cell is trained for strength only, then there's no time under tension, but just, power moves. Then it wants to get bigger for tensile strength so it doesn't tear, stuff like that. And so when you're doing it exclusively endurance training, you end up like a marathon runner with really thin muscle fibers. When you do exclusively power strength training, you end up like a bodybuilder with big muscle fibers. But when you're doing both at the same time, like we do, then what happens is the muscle cell doesn't change, it gets denser. So it won't get smaller because we're doing strength training at the end. It won't get bigger because we're endurance training up to that point. So it stays about the same. There's some size increase, but not a ton, enough for toning and definition, but not enough for bulking. But it certainly gets denser. So if you're walking through the forest and you dug up a petrified branch, and then you found another fresh branch that was the exact same size, the petrified branch is going to be a lot heavier and denser than the fresh branch. That's kind of how we are. So our muscles get denser as new proteins and things get put in the cell, but without significant bulk size increase. And then that's how we also get stronger and gain muscle mass or muscle weight without bulking up because we're
Wow.
doing both endurance and strength training at the same time.
Wow. That's fabulous and very well explained. That's almost word for word how I explain it to people as far as the muscle failure. Like
Yep.
if you have 10 level strength, for example, and you go to 9, the body
Mhm.
thinks, okay, great. We're able to do 9. We're already at 10. There's no real need to change anything. I don't think a lot of people realize that the body is so lazy and loath to do more work than it needs to because of the way we evolved. It's not going to get stronger if it doesn't need to get stronger. It's
Yep.
always adapting to that. And so it's only when you push up against that edge and say like,
Hmm.
no, your body doesn't understand whether you're on the extreme machine or you're,
Yeah.
arm wrestling a grizzly bear. It doesn't really know the difference. It just
Hmm.
understands that effort, and that's paramount. So that's
Yep.
fantastic.
Hmm.
As you're doing these exercises, is there a target time or a number of sets or reps or anything like that you're also trying to monitor?
Yeah, typically it depends on which method we're using. So we're trying to get to about 7 reps on most of the methods, but on a couple of the methods, we're only getting to 4 or 5 reps max. And an example would be the method that people might be able to understand if they're familiar with super slow is our 7 second method. So it's 7 second concentric phase and 7 second eccentric phase. So 7 seconds smooth motion, 7 seconds on the way up, 7 seconds on the way down, and no stop at the top, no stop at the bottom, constant motion. The top is low enough that it's still your muscle is contracting. So it's never off, there's never an offload with momentum or because you're locking out. So you're keeping the muscle in contraction the whole time. That's the case with all of the methods, but that would be the first one. And so with that one, we would go to 7 reps. So a 14-second set, 7 reps is, around 2 minutes. Then we get to do our splinter techniques. So hopefully we're going to hit failure, fatigue somewhere in there. Then we keep going. So we're actually going beyond failure with the splinter techniques. And by that, I mean, maybe it's pulses, maybe you're changing the range, going perpendicular to the main range of motion. Maybe the trainer gets in and they're pushing a little bit for extra negative or something like that. We have 26 to choose from, but because we have one for every letter of the alphabet. And then those splinter techniques will be used among all the different methods. But another example of a method, instead of slow and smooth, 7 seconds up, 7 seconds down, ratchets is stops. 7 stops to get to the top. And then 7 stops coming down to the bottom. Again, staying within time under tension, never offloading or resting. And then we have the Torrendo method where it's a slow start, accelerate up, fast finish. So the top would look like this. In a traditional gym, the top looks like this. At our gym, the top looks like this. So we're stay in tension. And then down 2 stop, up 1 stop, down 2 stop, up 1 stop, down 2 stop. And so those are 3 examples of the 7 that we have. But the other purpose of that is to train their brain and nervous system because your brain has to focus. We can't do our reps and talk about stuff or watch the TV like you see in 24-hour fitness, people doing all the time. We have to focus. So it's actually a form of meditation. Prefrontal cortex is highly engaged because you have to concentrate on controlling that motion. And your nerves have to work really hard. Well, what's two and what's one and what's a full stop or what's the ratchet? And how smooth, smooth, smooth. Don't speed it up here where it's hard, keep it slow, that kind of thing. And so it's training the brain intensively and the nervous system intensively. So people get brain benefits as well as nervous system benefits, coordination benefits. People get better at sports as opposed to bodybuilding, for instance, that is uncontrolled repetitions, fast motions, ballistic reps that you don't have to think about. And if you ever want a good example of that, ask any bodybuilder, professional for sure, because they're spending all day doing this uncontrolled motion kind of stuff. Ask any bodybuilder to do any sport that they haven't done before, and they're a complete oaf because they've detrained their nerves all day, every day. But you go with sport specific training or our style or something, anything that's controlled where you have to focus and you have to think about your movement, functional training, those people are going to get better at sports. And if they try a sport they've never tried before, they're going to be better than average at it on the very first day.